Well, my name is Lorenz, and I am one of the founders behind Sutra. Discovered Sociocracy in the last year, and was very fascinated by the emphasis on circles, and just even on all the materials that I've seen about sociocracy. It felt very similar in heart and structure to our own work with Sutra and how we have kind of conceptualized things. So Sutra started with the aspiration to connect people in meaningful and deeply human ways online. It's always been a big interest of mine, is how do you connect people in authentic and deep ways online, in the sense that people actually have a chance to speak to each other here, and there's a sense of connection and relationship, more so than you might get in just like some sort of Facebook group or something like that. And along that trajectory, I won't go into the whole kind of trajectory of that journey, but some of the insights that we had were that one way that people feel connected is through small groups. That if you are in a group of 100 or even 30 people, it's much harder to feel a genuine, right? Again, everything that we do revolves around like a genuine sense of felt connection between people. The sweet spot for that is generally 5 to 10 people. And that I can actually, if you feel that with a subset of a community, that it really helps you feel connected to the broader community. If you feel very connected to 5 or 10 people in a much larger community, then that actually gives you a sense of belonging to the larger community. And so that's very much kind of a theory that we like to work with. The other idea that has been very influential for us, so a lot of this work started out inspired by theory and Otto Scharmer. And in his online course, he would have people break out, 30,000 people break out into groups of 5, where they would then give you an interaction template. They call it a case clinic. There are many different versions, from that to liberating structures to, all sorts of different ways that if you put a group of people together and then give them a sequence of steps for them to go to interact. And that has been very much an idea of exploration for us, that how can you kind of bring that into the asynchronous context and create asynchronous structures that can somehow drive interaction or knowledge gathering, and connection. So that's pretty much the heart of it. And the other thing that we realized as we were developing our software over the last 4 years was that if you just put people in a small group, it can often be difficult to foster engagement. And we kind of serendipitously fell into creating a learning experience for the Harvard program in refugee trauma, where we moved on a 7-month blended learning program into our software focused on small groups. And it was really powerful because we saw near 100% engagement. And so it really crystallized this idea again that learning can be a very powerful catalyst for community building, because it gives people some specific thing to really connect around. And that has levels to it. There's the subject being learned, and then there's the way that people are, their way of being in that learning. And that I think is very relevant offline. The quality of listening, the quality of communication and receptivity and awareness in a group, the way of being, right? So whatever the subject of discussion is, the way of being is a very big part of it. And how do you develop that way of being? And so that is a very big kind of point of inquiry for us around how software can not just drive inquiry and learning, but also support the way of being that is occurring. So with that, that's kind of the top level philosophy and theory around what we've been trying to do and working on with Sutra. And Sutra is very much an ongoing experiment. We've been very lucky to be doing this for 3 or 4 years with lots of different communities and courses that have been willing to experiment with us. And that's very much how we've grown, is just iterating into different use cases and with the same theme about, authentic human connection. Everything in Sutra revolves around a circle. And if you understand what a circle is in Sutra, and then you begin to understand how you can um, play with it, you can see how Sutra becomes very flexible and can meet a lot of different use cases. That is both a pro and a con because Sutra has this very flexible circle construct. It sometimes can be confusing up at first. Once you understand it, you realize that it really gives you a lot of freedom. So here, what we're looking at is a women's meditation course called the Illumined Woman. And it has 4 groups that have been created in it. So just to kind of frame the context, the Illumined Woman is a circle that contains 4 circles. These 28 people have all paid for this experience. They paid $400 for it. Sutra processed that registration, and then everyone was assigned to a subcircle. So I'm going to go into this subcircle now. And so you can see it looks similar to what we were just in, except here the main interface is a real-time discussion feed. So the primary interface for a circle is real-time chat, and there's a mobile app. It kind of functions like WhatsApp or whatever. So it's a very kind of chat-like experience. If you want to post a message, you can do that. It pretty much does what you might expect it to. So in that sense, that's the basics of it. It's similar to what you might expect with Slack or whatever. Where it is different from something like a Slack is around kind of 2 specific big things. One is the resources, which is the kind of knowledge base aspect of each circle, and 2 is in the automation, as in how we really let you do a lot of very interesting things with automation. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into resources. So in this context, we're talking about a learning experience. So you might expect kind of weekly content that's being released. And here we have week 1, video content, text, video, images, whatever you might expect. And these can be published 1 week at a time. This resources section can also be used like a knowledge base. So you can either lock it down so it's top down, or open it up so it's bottom up. It's very flexible in that sense. And we'll get into a little bit of that later with some, another big difference between, say, Sutra and something like Slack is the way that we do knowledge harvesting. So that is the resources. I'm gonna go back to the discussions here. So far, so good. Any questions? Yes, great. Okay, cool. So I'm going to get into some of the automation aspects here. If I scroll through this discussion feed, you'll see some of these green bars. The green bars are part of a automated sequence of posts. So, if you think about what this experience is, this is an 8-week course, 8 or 6 weeks, where people have been dropped in. And then part of that experience is the conversation, and part of it is the fixed content that's released. The conversational part, how do you guide that, right? How do you somehow, if you think about the metaphor of a classroom and a textbook, someone comes in, they're in the classroom, there's the classroom discussion, and then there's the textbook. If you're a good professor, you kind of guide the classroom discussion somehow. So it's not just a random. So this is a way to basically create a script that guides that discussion. And this content can be images, video, it can be just prompts. So it's very flexible in the way that you create it. But the idea then is, for example, in this course where you have 4 groups that are created in parallel, then you just take that script, boom, drop it into those 4 groups, and then you can supervise. So there's a baseline of material that is injected into the conversations. That can happen on kind of fixed intervals. So let's see if I can just pull this up real quick and give you guys a quick look at what the what's going on behind the curtain. So here is a structure. Yeah, perfect. So this is the structure, and it basically says, here's the first post, welcome to week 1. Publish immediately after that post the week 1 assignment. These are all set to publish immediately for some reason. Let's have a look at what this this demo is it's a bit old. So here, yeah, exactly. So here you can set how you want these things to go out. So you can say dynamic, publish after 75% of people participate, 101 person responds. So you can kind of create these dynamic, group-oriented conversational experiences. If you had a group that was discussing something and you have 5 people and you need all 5 to respond before the next prompt goes out, this is how you can basically very easily create a sequence of posts and then structure it so that the next content goes out after a certain threshold of participation. And the other big thing with group processes is it's very hard to keep people engaged. Everyone's got their own thing going on. And what we've found works really well is you can add email reminders at each step. So Sutra makes it very easy to create personal looking emails. So these look like they come from your personal email account. And so you can create a process of this kind of automated conversational sequence where between each prompt, not only do you have the prompt that goes out at a certain threshold of participation, but you can create email reminders that go out to individuals and appear to come from your personal email. And that in our experience, that can be a very powerful way of kind of navigating the group and keeping people engaged. I know I went into kind of a super technical aspect there. Are we still, any questions? All good?
All good. We were discussing use cases here.
Okay, great. Okay, so I hopefully I've kind of illustrated how that kind of automation works in the context of the group experience. I'm going to build on that.
Question.
Yeah,
Sorry. I think when you and I talked at some point, and I'm not sure whether I remember correctly, but we had what I on my mind called a macro. I'm not sure what you called it, that you can basically have a library of those sequences. I think sequences is what you called it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that something you wanted to show now? Or I just want to tell you that that's something I'd be interested to show.
Yeah. So I can illustrate that real quick and then show some different ways that the sequences can be used. So if I go to structures here, so this is a sequence, right? And if I want to create a new one, I'm going to create a sequence and we'll call it, I don't know, Thursday inquiry, I don't know. And who are the stakeholders today at post? What are their concerns? Great. I'm just kind of pulling this out of thin air. We're just creating one of these sequences on the fly, just so we can see exactly how it works. Any additional thoughts? Great. So here I've saved this sequence, and it's called Thursday Inquiry. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to create a subcircle to this subcircle. There are many ways you could do this, but we'll just call it, general discussion, or why not keep it real, right? Thursday's discussion. Create that circle. And so I'm going to go in here, and here's a circle, but I want that specific sequence in here. So I'll go to structures. There's that Thursday inquiry. I'm just going to add it to the circle. Thursday discussion. Next. I could send it as myself, but I don't want to just see it over and over as me. So I'm going to send it as SutraBot. And then when I go to the discussion, here it is. Who are the stakeholders today? And I reply, all of us. Post that. What are their concerns? How to use Sutra. Any additional thoughts? You get the idea. So basically, it makes it very easy to create these kinds of sequenced inquiries that can either be super basic like these or points for reflection. What I'm going to show you here is the next thing I'll show you is less, maybe a little, not counterintuitive, but non-obvious, is the way that, for example, you can do something like this. So let me actually go here. So one of the things that you can do with Sutra is basically create a link that automatically creates a solo circle with a type of sequence in it. So in this case, we've got a link called worksheet.sutra.co, and this is something that can be shared with people in the community or whoever, and or as a course, for example, if you wanted to create a sociocracy training program. And then someone clicks on that and they get dropped into what we call a solo circle, which is basically a circle with one person. And so here I have a sequence. It's the ideal customer avatar sequence. So it's like, think of your ideal customers. What do they have in common? You know, they're tall. Next post, you know, create a representation of some specific details. You know, they're blonde. So it's a very easy way to take this kind of structure concept and package it into an experience that you can deliver to people with a click of a link. And so you can do that both in the group context, which is where we were here, where you create the group, you add people to it, or they join it, and then you add that sequence. Or you can you have a high degree of automation where you can really automate a lot of things, like, for example, you know, add a structure, or publish a resource, and kind of create an entire experience that's entirely automated. And you can do this for a group as well, where basically every time you have a certain threshold of, say, 5 to 10 people ready, you can drop them into an experience and then automate everything that happens. How are we doing so far, Ted? Any guidance or directions you want to give me?
No, I have so many ideas in my head of how to use this for something that I can hardly
pay attention.
Hardly pay attention because my mind is planning the next project. No, I'm doing great. This is great.
Cool. I'm going to show you one, maybe a couple more main things here that can be interesting. So, okay, so hopefully I've illustrated the automation aspects pretty well. What I want to show you next is the kind of knowledge harvesting features that we have in Sutra, because they're pretty unique. So, you know, you have a discussion, and if it's a couple of things is, first, you know, people tend to share very lengthy posts, and then second is that, you know, with any conversation of a particular time span, the things that people share after a week, it's gone, right? It's somewhere, you know, in way behind in the activity feed. And so how do you harvest that? How do you somehow capture that and then make something with it? Particularly if you have an inquiry process going on. You know, if you're taking a group of people through a sequence of kind of inquiry prompts, how do you then somehow do something with that? And so this is where we have a feature called noting that's very much in response to that objective. I can note this, and I can, first of all, I can edit and annotate it, and annotate, right? So I can add some additional commentary. But the most powerful thing, I think, is that I can add a label here. So we'll just call this label meditation. We'll give it a color, create that label. So here, and let's note one more thing here. I'm going to note this with this label meditation. So what it lets me do is it lets me retroactively organize the conversation. And of course, I can add more than one label. So I can, if I want, I can create a label here called reflections. And so it lets me retroactively organize the conversation. Then I can zoom in on that part of the conversation. And what I think is really the most powerful possibility here is that then I can capture these and add them to a resource. So I can basically, I'm going to create a new topic here. We'll call it meditation, personal insights. And I can go from, you know, the chaos of unstructured conversation and kind of iteratively then capture the nuggets that have emerged, and then synthesize that into a long form document where everyone is attributed. Here's the original discussion. Go ahead.
How local is this? So is this within a circle, or could it, I know that some things also trickle up and some,
Yeah,
so can you talk
exactly.
about that?
Yeah, exactly. So let's save this. All right, so I've created this resource here. And here it is. Okay, so yeah, perfect question. So the way that resources work in Sutra is that they flow downwards. And what that means is that if you see here, this says illumined woman, and here are the resources. Well, these are the resources from the top level, from the parent circle, the illumined woman. This meditation resource is in the sub-circle. So if I go to illumined woman, and so here I am in the top level circle, and I go to resources, I see the resource I just created because it's in the subcircle. Now, if I wanted to see the resource that I just created, I'd go here to the meditation resource. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to find, I have a million different circles here, but this one's called the Illumined Woman, so let's find the Illumined Woman. Let's hope that that's the one, because there's a few of them. Okay, let's assume that that's the one. Save topic. Great. Yeah, and it actually just moved it here. So here it is. So now when I come back here, I'm going to refresh this page. There it is. So now it's visible in the top level. And I moved it to the parent. I could have moved it anywhere. I can move it to any circle in that I'm a manager of in the Sutra ecosystem. And also the other thing I didn't mention is that the circles themselves can exist in different circles. So if I go here to Illumined Woman, let's say this group one discussion, let's edit it, and I can go to parent circles. And so here the parent circle is the Illumined Woman, but if I also wanted to make it part of this other circle called Sutra Lab, I can do that, and now it's part of both of these circles. And so if I go to Sutra Lab, which is kind of my Sutra sandbox, it's right here, right? So now we're kind of sharing discussions across across communities, and that also has a lot of flexibility as far as knowledge sharing. And so just to, I want to kind of hone in on, so when I started in the beginning, I mentioned how you have this circle construct, and once you understand it, it gives you a lot of flexibility, because there's just a lot of different ways that you can slice it and use it and work with it. So I've illustrated this one example where you have, say, 4 groups running in parallel, but there's a lot of different ways you can use it. So for example, we have a yoga teacher training community with 800-900 members, and they use it as a discussion forum to for their decision making. So basically, people post a different circle for different subjects, and then when you click through, they have a discussion on that. Another way that is a very common use case for Sutra is training programs. So for example, here is a training program. And so here, basically just different circles for different threads. Homework, which is a read-only discussion where only the only the staff can post, and and then kind of what you might expect. So Ted, maybe I'll kind of hand it over to you for any questions, or if we want to go through kind of maybe a specific setup that I could go and just create it on the fly with your direction, just to see how that can work.
I'm aware that then
yeah, I do have a question. We saw the reflect button a lot, but you did not explain it. Is it what is that for?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to show you that in 2 steps. The reflect button in its most basic use case is a way to have inline conversations. So I hit reflect and I say, hello, this is my response. And so here it is, and it's either compressed or it's open. So it's a way to have a threaded conversation. On the deeper level, one of our particular interests with Sutra is, and I might be going on a total tangent that's not interesting to your group here, but is somatic awareness. How do you shift people's awareness to other attributes of their experience, whether it's like sensations, thoughts, feelings, images, associations, or whatever. So you can set up reflections with a type of micro survey, which really could be used in any kind of context. Basically, what thoughts and feelings come up for you, what associations come up for you, what images and sensations. And so I could say, birds, happy, grass, whatever. It's a way to guide the response to what people post. So rather than just having an open response where people might default to particular ways of thinking or advice giving, it's a way to kind of structure the response around that. So that's the kind of advanced level setup of Reflect. So the last thing I didn't show you guys was the survey feature. So you can set up surveys to collect money or information. And those surveys, when you create them, are also so you can create a survey for the reflections, and then basically here's reflections, and I can just go and say, okay, add to reflections, and that basically activates, it sets up that reflect button to work that way. Or I can add it to registration, so when someone registers or joins the circle, they get hit with a survey before they can participate. Or I can just send it to the circle. So basically send it to the circle, and that's what you see over here is just someone sent a survey to this discussion that then participants are invited to respond to.
Can a survey be part of a structure? Can you automate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
May I ask a question? Can this be used for network? Like I clearly see how this could be used in courses and stuff, but could it be used for networks and networks of networks?
Yeah, I mean, and I think so. This is kind of what I was showing you earlier with this other community here. So the yoga teacher trainer community, they're pretty much using it in that way where people are posting different discussion topics and having dialogue in that way. You don't have to use Sutra for a learning experience. You can use it for you can use it pretty much exactly the same way you use Slack, although it's not as maybe refined in that specific use case. But certainly around, I think one of the biggest benefits of Sutra in the kind of network building aspect is the resources, is the way that, so for example, the way that you can really build a very accessible and bottom-up collection of information that runs parallel to the discussion, and that can also potentially be built through this kind of the harvesting there. So if you are having a network where there's, the idea is to have more than just kind of casual conversations. So you're having meaningful conversations around, decision making or whatever. Inevitably, I think one of the biggest challenges with trying to scale that and just doing it with many groups around meaningful things is, what do you do with all that data? It's just like, it's just all over the place. And so this is a way to basically, in that network thing, kind of label it, organize it, harvest it into resources, and then have overlapping circles. So if you look here, for example, these discussions belong to different multiple top level circles. So you can, if you have kind of distinct networks that have overlap, Sutra is very much designed around this idea of having conversations that intersect those networks, and so the resources similarly intersect.
Do you have any questions right now, Jimmy? I have 3, but they're far away from the topic, so you have something now.
Just, I don't know how much of a question this is, or just a reflection, I guess. That, well, I guess it's just a dance between the expanding universe of conversation and the contracting focus. Like, it's, in my experience, it's relatively easy to generate, and it's relatively hard to narrow. To make sense of what you generated.
And that helps.
So I'm just sitting with that thought.
I like that visual. Thank you for sharing that.
I'll shoot a few questions here. Let's see. Asynchronous decision making. Do you want me to describe the user case, or is it obvious to you what the needs are, and you just want to show how one could go about it? I know when you and I played, we were thinking about, for example, if you want to make a consent decision making asynchronously, one very simple problem that circles struggle with is if you do it by email, how do you track whether everybody has responded? And I know that there's an automation that makes it fairly easy. Do you have other things that you've experienced how people use Sutra for asynchronous decision making?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can speak to that many other examples, because it's very much kind of an emerging territory for us, and very much you know, when we set out to build Sutra, we never really set out to build a learning platform, and that just kind of emerged. And as the more I've understood that, the more I've seen how, you know, things like community learning and decision making are very interrelated, and I would almost say that in a well-functioning society, they are actually kind of, you know, very much part of the same thing. And so Sutra has, by design and intentionally, always been built to be in that flexible way, not you know, like, not a learning management system where, you know, it's really been designed around this idea that you have discussions that can be collaborative and project-based, and we want to be a tool that you can use for that, you know, directly in that collaboration, and directly in that discussion, and indirectly in the knowledge building, that it's actually used in the context of what you're doing. It's not something that, you know, let's go learn over there and then practice over here. But, you know, let's like learn, practice, and decide, and build our understanding all in the same tool. So yeah, if you want, we can kind of, I can just create like a version of what that might look like, just to see what it could be in practice, and just kind of go back and forth around that.
We could just, if that's okay with everybody, we could just play with how the typical story unfolds. If that's, but that might be, you know, it might be a 5-minute thing. So I'm aware that I'm sort of making that decision that that's what we do. But I think it's worth doing. So so let's say go to some circle where you can play.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and create. We'll create a, you know, we'll call this like the, I don't know, sociocracy test. And we'll make it private. And so, great. So here we've created a container for other circles.
Right.
And
then, okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
To function, every circle needs 2 things basically. One is the backlog, and I want the backlog here because we'll need it. So that's basically a to-do list. It could probably be under resources. So a living document where people, like a living to-do list. That's really all it is.
Okay.
So, you know, you can just throw item 1, item 2 onto some sort of a list.
Okay. So, I mean, let's just try it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
to do to-dos?
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, yeah, it's fine. No, don't worry. You don't. We know what we're doing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So, and then, yeah, so we have, let's say that's the only circle we have. We don't really need different circles right now. It's good to only have one circle. And my understanding is, no, we start out without a circle. This is basically so we need one circle that, what I'm not
With the discussion, if you plan to have a discussion, so should I just call this the general discussion?
Yeah, whatever.
General discussion. Great.
Okay, so this circle, or yeah, this group. So what typically happens is, you know, they are sort of on a roll of things. They take care of things. That's all good, and then between meetings, somebody has an idea, and says, "Oh, how about let's use something that's without any content? How about we shift our meetings from second Wednesdays to Thursdays?" Okay, and then typically that would just be a post, right, or in some way. And then typically then a discussion flares up and people say why they can not do Fridays, although that wasn't even the question. And then at some point, when you've harvested some of the input, somebody will probably say, okay, I hereby propose. You know, that's the moment that Jerry is talking about, from generation to, okay, and now we're pulling it together. And then basically, the way I would set it up, but I have no firsthand experience with it, is basically an automation for proposal, right? Because now we're shifting into a different mode. Now we're shifting into, here's the proposal, and now we can only continue when we've heard from everybody.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways you could do that. So one, you know, could be like, you know, how about Thursdays for our meeting time, right? So there's the basic question, and then
people will
reply,
reflect, can't do that.
Monday, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But then at some point, someone wants to kind of go through a formal proposal process. And so one way to feel like, okay, we're going to do the proposal, and we want it to kind of go back here and, you know, create a circle called, you know, proposal for meeting change. And so we could pin this, so this is always on top. Let's refresh the page here. Right, so now no matter what gets created, general discussion is always on top. And what we could create as a structure that is basically the proposal structure that can, so we'll call this the proposal structure. And so what might be some of the attributes of the proposal structure?
Yeah, hold on. So I'm liking this. I'm really just thinking out loud. So bear
cool,
with
me too.
So I think what we would need is somebody making a proposal. Then what we need is clarifying questions, quick reactions, hearing from everybody. For clarifying questions, we don't need to hear from everybody. It's just basically something like 40 or maybe 24 hours. So first question, do you have this is the proposal. Are there any clarifying questions? And then 48 hours later, 24 hours later, we can continue with the next one. I would like to.
So,
yeah.
Okay, let's try this. First is, what is the proposal? So this is going to be the opening question. What is the proposal? Okay. And then the second one, and then and so we can say publish immediately after
one person,
because that's going to be the person, and we're not going to publish if he doesn't respond, or she. And then what? So after that, this is going to be a clarifying question for the group.
Yes. Are there any clarifying questions?
Are there any clarifying questions? Okay.
And then we just wait for 48 hours, and we assume that if people have questions, let's see, I don't know whether that's too refined, but ideally, maybe the leader or the facilitator or the author of the proposal, I don't know, would be notified if somebody has a question, so that all the questions can be answered in that time frame.
Okay.
Complicated? Was it easy? I don't know.
No, I mean, they're part of the discussion, so they're going to receive updates on anything that's published in that discussion.
Okay.
And then, do you want any more after that? Anything else?
A quick reaction, and now we have to hear from everybody.
quick reactions?
Yes, quick reactions,
Quick reactions, please.
Okay.
Okay, and anything else?
Then last round is consent, and we again have to hear from everybody.
Okay, so quick reactions. Do we want to give that a day or 2 days or?
It doesn't really matter. What's important is that everybody has said something.
So,
Everybody must. So should I say 100% or 75%?
I would say I don't know. Let's build the ideal first. Everybody, yes.
Everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
great.
actually, if not, if people don't respond, I like that safety measure here. If somebody
Publish anyway.
right, and then you
after
can,
2 days or 3
yeah,
days.
right. After 2 days, it just moves on. Like, okay, yeah, perfect, exactly. And then consent, and now we need to hear from everybody. So, are there any objections, or do you consent? You can.
Okay, and so here, do you consent, basically, or are there any objections?
Exactly.
Or do you consent?
Right. Okay. And
Okay.
now we hear from everybody. Ideally, and now we can go to the question from earlier that Damien had. Can you use? I wonder now if we could use a survey here, because ideally people have a checkbox of, yes, no kind of thing.
Yeah. So I don't think I've created any surveys, but let's
we can also
let's save this
and say, okay, we can imagine that now there would be a survey, so we understand the structure. Right.
So let's just it'll take literally like a minute.
Okay.
So create survey, and this is
so you can say
yes, no.
the one well, let's just do it, but this is, I already see a complication here. You consent. Yes. No. Single choice. Great. Save. And let's go back to where we were in the structures. So this is everybody after the do you consent? So do you want this one to be a survey?
Yes.
Should I just make that one instead of a question? I'll make a survey and we'll call it consent and save. Okay, cool. So here is how it could work. I'm going to show you kind of, so if we go back here, I'm actually going to, because what we want to happen is that when someone creates a circle, ideally, if it's a proposal circle, it automatically drops that structure in there. I don't have to go and fiddle around with anything. So we're going to try and accomplish that, and I think it's attainable. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to create a new section here called proposals. So this is a specific circle where people create proposals. And I'm going to use this feature called Group Journey, which I will illustrate in a second. Great, so let's do that. And here we are. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a little, we're going to add to, manually create, okay. And I'm going to add that structure that we had worked with earlier, the proposal structure. Okay, great. So I just created a sequence, and basically what I'm saying is whenever a new circle is created in proposals, drop that structure. So I'm going to go to circles here, and I'm going to, so just to back up a little bit, right? So I'm here in Sociocracy test, and I've been in general discussion. We just talked about changing the meeting date. Now we're ready for the proposal phase. So I'm going to go here into the proposal section, and I'm going to propose proposal for meeting change. Create that. Great. So here it is. I'm going in. Hello there. Welcome. Oh, I need to fix this. This is a little bug that we start having. These things are rearranged. Basically, whatever. But let's just assume that this thing is the last question. What is the proposal? proposal for meeting change from Wednesday to Thursday. Great. Okay, great. And oh, there's a little bit of a mishap here. I will fix that. But anyway, the next one came out. Are there any clarifying questions? And you can kind
of whatever we said.
What's that?
No, we have to wait for 24 hours.
That's right. We have to wait for 24 hours. And then here's the proposal progress. And then I think, yeah, everyone can post. And then in 24 hours, we'll post the next thing. And another thing that might be interesting to you is that if I go back up here to proposals and I click and look at members, it should progress. Yeah, it kind of shows you the progress for each one. So, you know, if we were over here, when I created that structure, let's go to the structure for a second to give you a real visual structure. So yeah, here's the structure. Basically, when I created it, edit, you can show structure progress indicator in the circle, so you could turn that on and off. But basically, it shows you the progress through, you know, 2 out of 4 prompts have been passed. So at the top level, as the administrator, you can see that you can kind of see how far through the proposal structure that people are.
I'm aware of 2 things that I should ask you. One is, although I know because I've asked you, but for the recording and people here, pricing. Say something about pricing or your business model in general so people understand.
Sure. So our business model is pretty simple. It's we have a paid account system. We have a basic free version, and the biggest limitation on the free version is the number of private circles you can create. So it's you can create 5 private circles in the free version. I can just pull up the pricing page while we're as a visual here, the professional version is $35 a month, and then you get unlimited private circles and automation. And then the pro version is just kind of a little more education focused around quizzes and surveys and certificate creation. Yeah, that's pretty much the business.
Thank you. And then the other thing is, since actually,
just let me kind of complete that. So yeah, there's basically, when you create a circle, you can have as many members as you want in it, and you can create circles within that. So and they can create circles within your circle. So they don't, like, the members in your circles don't need to have accounts. It's just you need to have one to be able to create a private circle.
The last time we talked, I was thinking that it might need, you know, I was expecting, I didn't have specific areas where I thought it needed tweaking to work for Sociocracy, yet I was expecting there would be things. And I think we talked about your willingness to respond to, you know, oh, you know, this Sociocracy community would really like that. So if you want to say something about that, would be interesting. But right now I'm more sitting with, really, this is so flexible already that maybe the customization to apply it to Sociocracy really comes from the how we use it, you know. So it doesn't, like, Sutra per se is ready. It's just that we need to think through of how do we use that for our cases, what kind of automation can we use, and so on. Basically, what's the layer that we put on top so that we get exactly what we want in the right order. So anyway, but if you want to say something about the first question, about your willingness to and what it would look like.
So this, you know, this kind of speaks to what we were saying earlier. Like, we really started out with the intention, you know, our core intention in the very beginning was to connect people and resources within communities. We kind of found that learning and knowledge building is a way to that, and we're always really trying to come to that synthesis between. I feel like in today's kind of software marketplace, you have collaboration tools, you have communication tools, you have community tools, you have learning tools, and I guess from our vantage point, the ideal community is really a synthesis of all those. Like people that collaborate together, communicate at a deep level with deep levels of awareness, and are learning together in their decision making. So it's very much a singular function. And so for us, that's not something that we're figured out. It's really like a very much a continuous ongoing inquiry that's kind of emerging. Like I had really all of this stuff here, particularly around the knowledge curation, is just kind of a product of a highly emergent process around really following this trajectory about like meaningful connection and communication between groups of people. So we're always very interested in feedback and kind of feature requests that are based on real world situations that revolve around these things here. We try to avoid building, when someone asks us to build a very specific feature, we always try to think about it in how can we generalize it to make it applicable. Like a perfect example of that is the progress feature. We had people who wanted it for the learning experiences that we created. And so for us, it was just like, okay, we don't want to be an LMS. We want to be used like an LMS where appropriate, but it's just not in our DNA to be like, we are an LMS. But what we found is just by kind of thinking about it and abstracting it a little bit, it's something that really could be useful for, in this kind of broader use case that I showed you. So what I'm illustrating is just our decision-making approach around how we build new features. And so we're very open to, obviously, if anything is like confusing or dysfunctional about a specific feature that we have, that it's always our top priority is to improve it. And there's a lot of improvement because Sutra is a very kind of emergent and organic body of work. But then for new things, like if you're like, it would be great if there was a way to kind of have roles in a circle. That was one of the features you asked me for. And so that's something that is definitely a possibility, and something that we would just think about how to build in this kind of open way. So we're very open to evolving the feature set, and we're also very open to our aspiration is to turn this into an open source project. So we're very open to developer participation and support if there's anyone in the community that's interested in being involved.
Thank you. Is there anybody? I've asked my questions. Anybody else here? Jury,
are we out of time though?
We are technically out of time, but I do want to give people a chance. Looks like, hold on. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a quick question on is there API and integration with other apps?
There's no API. Again, it's something that we're open to building, but I would need more developmental resources. Right now we're a very tight team, and so we don't have an API. If there's a specific integration that someone wants to approach us with, we'd be very happy to consider how to accommodate that.
Yeah, no worries. Do you have anything, Lori?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Beautiful.
All right. Yes.
Just a little.
You want to be in a breakout? Is that what you said?
Yeah, a couple of questions.
Oh, I see. There's another event in the Zoom room, thanks to my bad planning. So if it's okay with you, Lorenz, I would send you. Oh, but then you would need to be in that. Sending people into breakout is the plan. But I will formally close this.
We could just follow up at another time. Just be emails. Doesn't need to really be a.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to email me, it's lorenz@sutra.co, LORENZ @sutra.co. Yeah, please email.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to give you what I've said that before, but I want to say it here publicly, that I loved how you started out with what your intention was, and I can really see how that intention of wanting to create meaningful connection and make it easy for people, how that shows in the tool. I really love the touch and feel like it seems to have breathed that in. I really love that about it. So very sweet. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Much love.